All right, YouTube, it appears that I'm live. Now, I'm not paying attention to chat, but I do have to figure the stream itself out here. I do see that there are already people in chat somehow. I had a little bit of a difficulty setting this up. Okay, now that's muted. So just bear with me here. How did you like that debate? I think it was a little bit more interesting than the first presidential debate. I also think, by the way, Trump showed that he is capable of debating. He stumbled out of the gate. I will say that for the 100 or so people already here. He stumbled out of the gate. I thought at first with the first question, I thought, oh God, Trump's going to completely flub this again. He's not going to be able to do this. He really, really got into it though. I think vastly outperformed Clinton. I think on substance, perhaps Clinton has a slight edge, but I don't think the average person watching that debate really cares about issues at this point. We kind of already know what their general ideas are. They've already made that case to everybody under the sun. At this point, it becomes style. And Trump, by going on the attack, really unbridles his capabilities. We saw in the Republican primaries, when he was at the debates, basically all he did was attack people. He didn't talk about issues at all. That's why he won. In the first presidential debate, he attempted to just stick to issues, try not to attack, tried to look very meek, very presidential, I suppose you could say. And it didn't work for him, and it's not going to work for him. He should act more like this at the third debate. If he does this well in the third debate, probably wins the election. That being said, for the growing number of people here, and I am not looking at chat at the moment. I'll go to chat after I go through some of my notes about sort of the highlights of the debate. Trump did very well. I think if a person is a partisan Hillary fan, of course, they think Trump lost, but they're going to think that no matter what happens. His ardent fans will think he won no matter what happens. But I would give him like a 60-40 win there, which is pretty handy. And it's what he needed, honestly. In order to get, I think, by the way, I will say this, prediction. The reason specifically why he used so many quips, you saw Abe Lincoln and so forth brought up. The reason why he used so many little jabs at Clinton throughout the debate is to give the media talking points to distract them from the Trump sex tape sort of locker room crap. And I think it'll work because the media is like a bunch of little kids. They have a very, very short attention span. Unfortunately, a lot of the voting public does as well. Works well for Trump, not necessarily for issue-driven parties, issue-driven movements, let's say. But it works in the sense of winning in a debate. But I think you'll see that mostly the polls will reflect, yes, indeed, Trump did just fine. Some of them will probably show a stalemate if you get like maybe Politico or something like that. I don't know what the snap polls will end up showing. Because I'm streaming here, I can't pay attention to any of that stuff. So if anyone can dig through and find any early snap polls that were conducted, as well as the, just the routine polling firms. I don't mean like Drudge or MSNBC, something with an axe to grind. I mean like some of the smaller sites that you would hope won't get brigaded. Maybe forward that to me in link form once I get to chat. Right now, of course, I'm not. So I'm going to open up my notes here and just talk a little bit, sort of analyze a few of the things that were said. I don't have as many notes for this one because most of the time that Clinton was talking, she reverted to just talking about how her policies were magical and great and all of that stuff. She didn't, other than be smarmy and sarcastic, she really didn't do a huge amount of attacking outside of bringing up Trump's tax returns. I think she thought better of it thereafter. When Trump started going after her, she looked not her normal sarcastic, smarmy, smug-looking face, but rather a worried face, as though she knew that she was going to have to contend with somebody whose debate style she couldn't really counter effectively. I think she realized that. You saw her demeanor change after roughly the third question. You did also, by the way, see Trump attack the moderators on numerous occasions. That was probably not the greatest idea. There will be some people who perceive that as bullying because they actually believe that the moderators are fair. Now, I don't. And it's fairly clear who Anderson Cooper is going to vote for, as I said earlier. But for some people, they'll see that and they'll say, oh, well, that's a little bit piggish. But then again, if that was going to influence their vote, they're already a Clinton voter or a Johnson voter at this point. They're certainly not supporting Trump if they care that Trump is piggish, because they already knew that halfway through the Republican primaries. There's also a rumor swirling right now about Mike Pence might drop. His bid is running mate. I don't believe that, by the way. I think that's a CTR talking point. I think it's fairly clear. You see a flood of supposedly pro-Hillary individuals across various politically connected sites immediately in the wake of these debates, starting about 5 minutes before they end. I think it's fairly clear who's doing this. I think it's fairly clear that these are not organic individuals, because if they were, I can't imagine that they would have found their way, for instance, to 4chan or something like that. They'd be on, Facebook pages or something like that, honestly. They'd be on the Normie News Network or something like that. But Trump's biggest, I think, foible of the night came very, very early. And from there, he steadily built up steam, peaked about halfway through the debate, maintained that throughout most of the rest until the very end, when it was sort of an even keel and things sort of slowed down. His biggest foible was trying to deflect regarding his sex tape by bringing up ISIS and saying, oh, well, they chop people's heads off and drown people, and we're here talking about me saying unkind things 10 years ago. Not greatly effective, and this is why I thought he was going to perform poorly when I was just looking at this, because he was incoherent at the time. It was his delivery that was the problem, not really what he was saying. What he was saying worked fine, but he didn't deliver it properly. His delivery got steadily better throughout the night and really peaked at the end. Honestly, as far as remaining coherent and on point, he did significantly better than at the first presidential debate. It was more like maybe one of the pressers that he's held, as opposed to one of his, more high-spirited rallies, with the attacks from those rallies thrown in. And he attacked her constantly throughout the entire night. Trump has realized, and what he should have known at the first debate, which is he can't tackle her on issues. He can't tackle her on issues because it's a zero-sum game. They will always end up in a stalemate, because undecided voters clearly don't care about those issues enough to decide based on them, other than a few, maybe immigration or something like that. And his supporters will always support him. Her supporters will always support her, at least the hardened fan bases will. So it makes no sense to attack her on policy, other than when she makes a mistake. He did go after her, for instance, on what she said regarding coal workers and things of that nature. That's effective, especially for the Rust Belt voters. Trump then attacked Bill Clinton, and I saw this coming when I realized he had held a press conference right before the debate, chuckling about, yeah, this is the end of my debate prep, and he was there with Paula Jones and a bunch of other people, and Jennifer Flowers. It was clear that he was going to bring it up. He was just waiting for an opportunity. It's his way of a countermeasure against the Trump sex tape. He has just effectively thrown Bill Clinton back into the ring against his will. The camera panned over to Bill Clinton's face while he was saying this, and you could tell he was pissed. It then panned to Hillary, and you could tell she was pissed. It got her under her skin. It influenced her the rest of the debate. Extremely effective. There will be people, of course, the sort of shills for Hill. They'll say, oh, well, Bubba Bill's not the one running for the presidency. Hillary is. But Trump successfully made the point that Hillary Clinton attempted to use character assassination on these people. He also did something even wiser than going after, oh, Bubba Bill philanders, Bubba Bill's a womanizer. Okay, that's fairly effective because it sort of cancels out the damage that's been done to Trump for supposedly being a philanderer. But he went a step further, and he brought up the fact that Hillary Clinton had defended a child rapist. Now, I would like to correct the record myself here for anybody who's wondering. Neither I nor any other sane individual cares that Hillary Clinton, as an acting attorney, defended a client who was blamed for child rape. What pisses me off, and what pisses others off, is that she was caught laughing about the case as though it were nothing to be concerned about, as though it were jovial. I would think that the proper reaction would be, yeah, I had to defend this fucking pervert, and the defense, the prosecution was stupid, and yeah, so now there's some crazy pervert out on the street, so I'm not too happy about what I had to do today as a pro bono lawyer. That'd be perfectly fine. Nobody's saying that somebody who's been blamed for a sexual crime shouldn't actually have an attorney. What people are saying is that it's unconscionable the way she reacted to having performed that case. It's her reaction thereafter, not anything she did during the case even, that's the problem. Trump made this argument, and it'll stick because now people are Googling it. And they're going to be Googling the same tape. I've had to link this to dozens of different Hillary Clinton supporters over time who claim that no such tape exists. But now people are going to Google it. Guess what? It'll change some of their minds if women's rights or children's rights are the main issue that they're worried about. Then they'll look at ISIS. They'll see Hillary is weak on that. They'll probably change their minds too. Trump then invoked WikiLeaks. Clinton tried to cast them off as Russian agents, which is a kooky conspiracy theory. It's very, very funny. We saw tonight 3 different times Hillary Clinton tried to pass off all of the troubles that she and Obama have had as somehow involving the Russians, claiming that they were an adversary, which is starkly funny because a few years ago when Obama was running for re-election, he claimed that Russia was not an adversary. He claimed, oh, yeah, they're a competitor, but the Cold War is over, so fucking Romney, you stop this conspiracy mongering. No, that's funny because Clinton seems to believe the same thing. It makes sense because she's in bed with people like Romney, and Trump pointed that out too. He pointed out Soros. He pointed out Blumenthal. He was dropping actual proper names, and probably the biggest hit he got in tonight was saying, yeah, I took a federal tax write-off. So too did all of your donors, you know, Buffett and so forth. Probably, again, rather effective because it links Hillary with something that's supposedly plaguing Trump's campaign. And he is right. It's no secret that this is what large corporations do. I still don't understand why he didn't go into a more refined explanation of how specifically his tax plan does go after the upper income earners. He once again, like at the first debate, he didn't explain it properly. He should have simply said, well, 0% of any number is still going to be 0. And he should have, and when asked to explain, he should have said, well, Hillary wants to raise the corporate tax rate, but she's not going to close the loopholes that allow them to pay nothing no matter how high the tax rate is. I want to lower the corporate tax rate, close the loopholes, and so they're at least paying something, and you'll see many hundreds of billions re-enter the U.S. economy. He should have done that. He had the chance. Yet again, he passed up the chance to really drive that home, while taxes are, have become a more major issue. By the way, Clinton should not be particularly happy about the fact that taxes are apparently on people's mind. It has been a losing issue for the Democratic Party almost in every election for time spanning back many, many decades. We're talking when your parents were probably babies or maybe hadn't even been thought of yet or conceived in the womb yet. So I'm not sure that that really plays to her advantage for the public discourse to move a little bit further from immigration and towards fiscal policy, because it's going to be difficult for Hillary going forward to make the case to actual disaffected citizens. Oh, yeah, well, your lives are so much better than they were X number of years ago. Well, that may be true for people in some urban areas. It can be true for people all over the country, but it's certainly not true in the Rust Belt. And that's one of the biggest up for play places it's just this giant conglomerate of swing states. Michigan is a swing state in this election. She never saw this coming, so it's going to become, I think, a problem for her. She also tried to blame Russia as the reason why there's a refugee crisis in Syria, and Trump, correctly, I think, pointed out the fact that the United States arming the FSA is what's dragging this out in the first place. I'm surprised he didn't say also, oh yeah, Clinton wants a no-fly zone in Syria, which may cause a nuclear war, and people call me reckless or irresponsible. Would have been rather effective. He chose apparently not to do that. The biggest applause he got of the night, and he was applauded half a dozen times, which is why I say it's fairly obvious he had the upper hand throughout most of the debate, because they were told by the moderators, don't react, don't applaud, don't boo. Clinton was booed once, Trump was never booed. Trump was cheered on like 6 different times. I think Hillary got like 2 rounds of applause. It's fairly telling. You can actually kind of gauge who won the debate by such a thing, specifically because the moderators have asked him not to do either. Clinton got booed specifically, by the way, when she claimed that the deleted emails thing was just a big lie, that it was a hoax. That's not good news for Hillary Clinton, by the way. Now, the people obviously don't believe her when she shills on this issue. But Trump got applause when he said, oh, no, Hillary will probably be in jail if I win. I'm going to appoint a special prosecutor and go after her. He just drove turnout among his supporters through the fucking roof. He just drove at least a minority of the independent voters that just really don't like Clinton, and that's why they're still independents, back into his camp to vote for him in hopes, however vain they might be, that he actually would do such a thing. He just stood up on stage. Think about this. Has this happened in any election that you can recollect? We're talking the sort of stuff that maybe went on back in the early 1800s with some of these sort of feuding senators and so forth, still having pistol duels or beating each other with a tire iron or something like that, 100 years later. We have this weird situation where one presidential candidate is standing up on stage essentially threatening to throw the other one in jail for treason. I think that's brutally effective, and he got cheered for it, which is why I say he probably just upped his odds with this debate of winning the election. By the way, for those, how many people are here? Oh, 3,000 people at the same time. I think that's 3 times the number of people that tuned in for the Pence debate, and I think twice or almost twice as many people as tuned in for the first presidential debate. So pretty good. My analysis is, by the way, Trump won. But for anyone who's wondering, I'm not paying attention to chat yet. I'm reading from a few notes. I promise you, I never use notes in my normal videos. But for a stream on something, it's going to be like at least an hour long. Yeah, I'm going to use a few notes just to sort of remember the highlights. Not that some of them can be easily forgotten. It's going to be hard to forget that Trump said, yeah, Clinton will probably be in jail if I win. That's pretty brutal, honestly. And that's exactly the kind of Trump that his fans at least wanted to see. And the undecided voters, well, that's the Trump they already saw before. They obviously didn't care. We want a blood sport. We want to see Trump rip Hillary Clinton to shreds verbally and spit her back out once he's done chewing her. That's what the average voter at this point wants to see. I think there are a lot of people who don't want to vote for Hillary, but they haven't seen enough of the blood sport to convince them that she'll probably end up in a federal prison if her opponent wins. Well, I think he just cleared up the problem there. But Clinton was in Cold War mode for half of the debate. She repeatedly ranted about Russia, and Trump looked, honestly, for a moment there, he looked genuinely confused when she started rambling for the second time about Russia and how somehow they controlled WikiLeaks, they wanted Trump elected. It's astonishing to me that this is actually being taken seriously, because I can remember, even in my lifetime not that long ago, if a presidential candidate had declared that Russia wanted to overthrow our election system, they would have been called a nut by both parties. It wouldn't have mattered who they were. They would have been called a McCarthyist nut. They would have been called a Red Scare throwback, a hopelessly outdated Cold Warrior. And yet we've got a situation where Hillary Clinton has managed to be taken seriously by at least some of the mainstream media. Some of them, even some of the mainstream media outlets are becoming, I think, a little bit wary of such claims, because they realize that there's no actual substance to them. There's no evidence that the Russians were involved in these things. There's no evidence for Guccifer 2.0, WikiLeaks. It could have been a DNC staffer. It doesn't matter. One thing I think Trump did, by the way, that felt kind of short, was repeatedly invoking Sanders. Okay, we get it. The Never Clinton crowd among sort of the Bernie bros might be swayed over to your candidacy by this. But that's a small minority of the Democratic electorate. You need to focus predominantly on undecided voters. Other than that, though, Trump had a very good night. Clinton was, honestly, here's why he did so well. At least I think he will have been shown to do well in the minds of many. Trump was underwhelming at the first debate, and Clinton was, mediocre, but, performed as well as can be expected. Clinton continued to be at that level of mediocrity in this debate. Trump, meanwhile, completely refurbished himself and soared above her head. Therefore, by comparison with their former performances, Trump looks like he pulled off a stellar win. Now, I say 60-40. I say a win, a solid win, not an utter crush out like maybe Pence versus Kaine was, but a win nonetheless, and an important one, because he's just thrown enough sound bites into the news cycle so that people aren't going to be talking about him saying, oh, yeah, grab her by the pussy in a couple of days. They're not going to care about it. Trust me. They're going to be digging through WikiLeaks. They're going to be talking about Abe Lincoln, oddly enough. And that was probably, this was one of his funnier lines of the night, comparing Lincoln's honesty with Clinton's dishonesty, and remarking upon that. Specifically, the reason why he did that, strange as it may sound, is because Clinton did something that was even stranger. Clinton claimed, and I don't believe this, and I hope, there can't even be a Clinton fan in this country who believes that this is true. She claimed that it was during watching a movie about Abe Lincoln that she thought of this idea about having a public versus private opinion. Do you believe that's actually what she meant? Was she actually quoting an Abe Lincoln movie? No. You know why she wasn't quoting an Abe Lincoln movie? Because the context of the fucking email that it was taken from by Podesta was in the context specifically of things that needed to be scrubbed, shouldn't be released to the public, and were potentially damaging to a presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton quoting a movie about Lincoln, or a fake quote by Lincoln, or a quote from one of Lincoln's speeches, would never be seen by a sane, rational individual as damaging to a presidential campaign. It would never be seen that way. The fact that it was from this specific Podesta email completely countermands the idea that she was telling the truth. This was a blatant lie on her part. Trump obviously knew it. The people in the audience, the people at home, they understand it was a lie. It was very funny. And then Trump, of course, comes out with a quip regarding Abe Lincoln. Thought that was fairly effective. His other funny line of the night, at least I thought it was funny, was congratulating Hillary on a great job because ISIS was now in 36 different countries when, of course, they failed to clamp down on ISIS to begin with, and in fact helped them spread by running a no-fly zone over Libya. Oddly enough, by the way, he didn't point this out either, and he should have. The no-fly zone that Hillary is suggesting in Syria not only could lead to a nuclear war, number one, but number two, would probably have the same net result as what we did in Libya, which is to say, yeah, Assad gets fucked out of the way, the Russians get disrupted, the FSA ends up losing against ISIS because it is a small, embattled nationalist force fighting against a far larger and technologically superior force that now controls a substantial and measurable supply of the world's oil. He should have pointed something to that effect out, and it would have crushed her campaign a little bit further into the dirt. Unfortunately, while Trump was much more coherent this time around, he still had moments where he didn't quite follow through. He did a lot better than with the first debate. That was my biggest complaint. He didn't do badly at the first debate, but he didn't follow through with his hits. And in this debate, to a greater extent, he did. I've still got allergy problems at the moment. And no, I don't mean I have pneumonia and I'm just claiming that they're allergy problems. No, I'm still actually capable of walking without randomly passing out and getting thrown into a van like Clinton. So trust me, there's no problem here. Clinton attacked him on taxes. That was probably her best piece of performance of the night. Acting incredulous and smarmy and making offhand comments about how your opponent lives in La La Land only works if there's not so much dirt on you. The problem is that Hillary's been so rocked by WikiLeaks and so forth, and Trump just threw WikiLeaks a huge bone. It makes it much more difficult for Clinton to say, oh, well, my opponent's just kooky. She's blaming the Russians for WikiLeaks at this moment. Okay? So I don't think anybody finds what Trump said to be maybe quite as kooky as that. Maybe I'm just biased here. But I think that going after a bunch of whistleblowers is a little bit conspiratorial, yeah. Saying, oh, the Russian agents and commies are back or something. It sounds like McCarthyism, honestly. It's very, very funny to see this coming. I mean, I would expect this to have come back from the Republican side, not the Democratic side. It's very, very strange. So, yeah, I give Trump a victory tonight. Not like a Pence-Kane victory, but certainly did far better than he did at the first debate. This also, by the way, should ease any doubts in the minds of Trump fans that he still has the advantage. I said earlier in my run-up to this analysis, if he did poorly tonight, there would unfortunately be a significant lowering of his chances. You know, if he just got wiped out, if he came out shambled on stage, he looked very, very reserved and tired, or he was just a mushmouth or something like that, or he performed even just in a half-assed way like at the first debate, he wouldn't be doing so hot right now. The polling would go heavily against him. But he went on a full frontal attack, absolutely smashed Hillary, smashed Bill Clinton, smashed George Soros, attacked the DNC, attacked even Republicans in Congress. And that may very well endear him to a lot of people. He also countermanded his own running mate, specifically on the issue of what to do in Syria. Specifically, Pence has come out and said, yes, if Assad and Russia are doing these things, they should be investigated for war crimes, and we should take military measures if necessary. Trump said, no, I respectfully disagree with it. We need to go after ISIS. By the way, his plan, his proposal here, I happen to agree with. We should ignore Russia. We should be working with them. We shouldn't be worried about the goddamn FSA. Unfortunately, the FSA has become some sort of retarded holy grail for the Democratic Party. I don't understand why they're supporting some Sharia law-loving Islamic nationalists instead of the secular regime that was already in charge before ISIS even got there, because they could kick the shit out of ISIS. It doesn't make any sense. And Trump pointed this out, and I happen to agree with him unreservedly. As someone who's not a Republican, who hasn't been a Republican, as someone who doesn't really give a damn who controls the House or Senate, I don't care who the Supreme Court justices are half the time. I don't support like the Ma-Jesus ideology, and I can say I completely support Trump's proposal in Syria. It is the right thing to do. We should attack ISIS. We should leave Assad alone. We should not be egging the Russians on. And he's sort of half right, by the way. I will point one thing out. When he says the Russians now have nuclear superiority, he's kind of correct. They have better missile tech in some categories, but we have better anti-missile systems. That being said, it's not a situation in which you want to antagonize your, as Clinton herself says, your adversary, your foe, your opponent, your locked in diehard struggle nuclear counterpart, as you might term it. Clinton apparently thinks it's just a great idea to antagonize Russia for no reason over this one particular largely irrelevant, embattled, war-torn state where half the cities have been already bombed into nothing more than ruins and craters. Okay, sounds like a perfectly reasonable goal to me. Yeah, let's go save Syria by bombing it some more. Okay. That's what Bush tried to do. And she praised Bush again, as if she didn't learn her fucking mistake the first time around. She says, oh, I worked with George W., and he gave New York all this good stuff after 9/11. Okay, praise George W. Bush. It just furthers in people's minds the fact that you're in bed with all these people, and it doesn't really matter what party that they're from. Meanwhile, Trump is attacking half of his fellow Republicans. Parts of Congress, the Bush family, and all the Romney, certainly, the Glenn Becks of the party and so forth. It was fun to watch. It was actually more entertaining than the VP debate because that one was, yeah, there were some insults thrown around, but it didn't get quite as venomous. It wasn't so poisonous and toxic as this one. This one was a blood sport. And if it's going to be a blood sport, it's not going to be Hillary Clinton that wins. She's used to making a sarcastic jibe and then going back to policy. And then she'll make another jab, and then she'll go and talk about policy for another 10 minutes. Trump, meanwhile, just repeatedly attacks her and forces her to go on the attack, distracting her from talking about policy effectively. And it worked. It worked brilliantly. He won this debate. I expect that the polls will reflect that. So now I'm going to go to the comments area, which I imagine with 4,000 people here is probably flooding over and overwhelmed, and I won't actually be able to read much, but now I'm looking at the comments. I'm also looking at myself with a roughly 10-second lag there. Oh my goodness. To Best Girl, did Trump do well enough to swing the undecideds? Some of them, yeah, probably. Anyone that secretly loves the idea of one politician completely blasting the other and putting them in federal prison on treason charges, yeah, they're going to vote for Trump at this point because that's exactly what he said he was going to do, without mincing words. And the thing is, people don't still perceive him as, he's not a career politician, but they don't even perceive him as a politician per se. They just call him basically the Donald. It is cult of personality, but it gives him that advantage. People will take it seriously. Now they're going to assume, yeah, if Clinton loses, she's going to prison. And maybe she will. Maybe he'd actually follow through. What should he do for the third debate? He should do exactly what he did tonight, and worse. He should come out and he should attack her even harder. He no longer has to be presidential. That time has passed. He's been abandoned by some of the GOPers in Congress. He's been abandoned sort of by the head of the RNC. He's been abandoned by, some of the groups, the PACs and so forth that have supported him. Anyone who cared about decorum has already left his campaign. He needs to utterly trash his opponent up one side and down the other, calling her out as a dishonest corporate politician who will destroy jobs, who is probably in bed with treasonous elements within the country, who's obviously insane because she's ranting about Russian conspiracies. He should cast her as a nut. In the third debate, he should suggest that she's a lunatic for suggesting that the Russians are involved in our election system. That's probably a good way forward for him. And he should talk more about Bill, honestly. It could be a winning issue for him. I mean, who's he going to piss off? At this point, there's nobody left to piss off. So he doesn't need to be presidential. He's going to the final act, which is, now this is where I hammer my opponent's skull in, basically, with a ball bat. There was no backlash from the tape because nobody cares about the tape. Any honest individual has heard worse than what Trump said if they went to college, if they've played a sport and they have been in a locker room, or if they just talk to people online. We all know it. Every single one of you, if you're honest, you do know there are plenty of people in this world, men and women alike, who have said far worse about sexual things than what Trump said. So nobody cares. Additionally, his fans don't care because they don't even really generally like the Republican Party. They see the Republican establishment at this point as treasonous, and there's reason for them to be taken seriously in this. There are people within the GOP that are no longer even endorsing their own candidate, and it makes them look suspect in the minds of anyone that's a strong Trump supporter, which is about a third of the voting public. You've got to realize his hardened voting base is significantly larger than that of Hillary Clinton. Most of her supporters are people that are not excited about her. They may respond positively towards one or two of the things that she says, but ultimately the only thing solidifying them to the Clinton bid is they hate Trump. Whereas a lot of Trump supporters honestly love Trump's policies. It's a minority of the population, but with what he said tonight, if their turnout is, catastrophically higher than Clinton's supporters, because most of them are weaker supporters, he probably wins the election, because you probably end up with a result that defies all polling, honestly, because it'd be so lopsided in his favor. Do I think that the election is rigged? No. I pointed this out some time ago. The elite within the parties, which work together, we see it happening right now with like the Bushes jumping aboard the Clinton camp. They're used to rigging primaries. The idea is that the establishment, as long as both candidates are from within that general core of establishment, doesn't matter which one wins. You don't need to rig a general election because it's harder to rig a general election. All you do is rig the primaries. Unfortunately, Clinton's strategy, as shown by the leaked Podesta emails, seems to have been to elevate Trump. They didn't realize that his message, I think, was going to catch on because he was going to use social media and basically ignore the standard protocol of a political party. When he started winning and propelled himself even further, they attempted to stop him and they failed. I think that Trump is a true maverick candidate that does truly exist outside of those ranks. I think he's probably had help on the inside in doing this, though. I think that there are probably people, honestly, I would say, that have defected from our political establishment, secretly helped Trump, and now they're in full panic mode because they're still trying to stop him. And the easiest way to do that is through propaganda, which is why they brought up Russia so frequently. Can I imagine Trump around my daughter? Well, I don't have a daughter. But I wouldn't, if I had a daughter, I probably wouldn't let her be alone with any mature men, depending on her age. Maybe she's old enough to do whatever she wants until I knew them fairly well. Yeah. I would think that you would suspect anyone. What about Bubba Bill or Bill Cosby? Bill Cosby was the happy, chuckly man in the sweater who was very family friendly. It turns out he's putting like lewds into people's drinks and raping them while they're passed out and stuff. So, yeah, the fact that Trump talks in a sexual manner, maybe he's just more open about that fact. Maybe he's a total sexual firebrand. Maybe he does have a 10-inch cock. Who fucking cares? It's not a policy issue. It has nothing to do with his ability to govern. It didn't hurt JFK. JFK famously bragged about needing a different woman every 3 days or else he got a headache and couldn't do anything. So I'm still looking at the comments here. Yeah. Oh, climate change. Non-issue for the most part. Obama stopped talking about it for the most part. So it's become a non-issue. The Democrats stopped exploiting it because they figured it was more lucrative to exploit, oh, well, the GOP's racist, the GOP hates women or something for the social media era. And it's backfired on them because now an issue on which Trump could be, handily defeated, because honestly, he did in the past say, oh, it's a Chinese hoax to destroy U.S. industry or something to that effect. They've lost it basically as a major issue. It's not in the top 5. It's probably not even in the top 10. Nobody cares about it. My generation was sort of the climate change generation when we were just going through college, the millennials. The younger voters, like those that are just entering college, they're not talking about that as much. They're talking more about like race equality and social justice bullcrap. So climate change has been put on the back burner with the same group of the electorate that typically is the most virulent in speaking about politics. Not as far as voting levels go. The oldest vote at the highest levels. But certainly in campaigning, in having the energy to go door to door to knock on people's doors, the youth cares less, I think, now about climate change than it did 5 or 10 years ago, honestly. Yeah, the fly. When I first saw that, I thought that it was like a fruit fly on my computer. I went to go shoo it away, and it was still on Clinton's head. I thought it was very funny. It was sort of Lord of the Flies sort of stuff, I suppose. Maybe she just smelled really bad. I don't know. But it was buzzing around Trump too. It just apparently didn't dare to land on him. Maybe it's because of his demeanor. The fly figured that Hillary was sweeter. We all know how sweet a person Hillary Clinton is when she orders drone strikes and things like that, honestly. Yeah. The comments are going so quickly, I can't really even keep up with them. Oh, how biased were the commentators? Well, because they got interrupted so many times, they didn't really have a chance to be as biased as what was the name of the first dude, Hector or something like that? I can't even remember. He was terrible. But again, everyone knew Cooper at least was going to be biased in favor of Hillary Clinton. He's a Democrat. It's fairly clear. That being said, at the next debate, Fox News is hosting it, and I think it's Mike Wallace, if I remember correctly. So I think you'll probably see less bias there. But the questions tonight ultimately were relatively fair. They didn't decide to ask about Clinton's emails once again. But there was never any chance, I think, from somebody like Cooper that they were going to allow such a question. I would say, because they got to so relatively few questions out of the total batch, it's entirely possible that they cherry-picked them. But Clinton did get, questioned about things that she said and done. So did Trump, more Trump. But it was more fair than Lester Holt. That was the one. It was more fair than the first debate, which might have something to do with the reason why Trump defeated his opponent this time instead of just kind of sort of being in a stalemate and winning maybe on, larger insults like he did in the first debate, in my estimation, of course. I know. Oh, Lester the molester. Yes, his 3-on-1 comment was effective, but only with his own support base. It just keeps the ethos going that it's Trump against everybody else. It doesn't sway undecided voters that they would already be supporting him. What's going to sway some of them potentially is threatening to jail Hillary if elected, going after her on wanting to go after Cole, and especially WikiLeaks, especially her emails and things like that. It's a sore issue for her campaign. It's the issue that won't die, the issue from hell for Hillary Clinton. It's not going away. In fact, it's getting more and more prevalent as time goes on. What's going to happen is that with each subsequent WikiLeaks revelation, the 33,000 emails and all of these other things get brought back up each time in a renewed form because they're being compared with new leaked material. It's very damaging. It's a war by attrition. It's not a surgical strike. It's a war by attrition. The enemy, Clinton, is being ground down slowly. She was hoping, I think, to do this to Trump more quickly with the sort of tape that was released, and it appears not to have had its intended impact. They conducted a poll, and I think it was NBC, so it's not exactly a pro-Republican polling group, that said something like 80% of Republicans don't give a crap about what Trump said. I imagine that translates fairly ably to the undecided voters. Any segment of voters that's still undecided doesn't care about the fact that Trump would say sexist things, supposedly. And I say supposedly because context matters, let's face it. I know that scrolling up freezes chat, but then people will still be chatting down below and I'll have to drag it back down. And I would quickly get buried. So there's no point to that. And anyway, I'm just sort of combing through these and trying to answer a handful of questions. You've got 10,000 comments or something. You're not going to be able to answer them all. The longer I stay here, the more they add up. Sort of like the debate. People kept interrupting each other, and then they didn't even get to probably 90% of the questions that they had to ask them, which is why I say there's every possibility they cherry-picked the questions, but we can't assume that. I still think, by the way, and I will say this, it's less wise for Trump to attack the moderators, even if they are clearly being unfair. His fans already realize that Anderson Cooper is going to vote for Hillary Clinton, doesn't really like Trump, and is going to go after him to a disproportionate degree. They already know that. You're not convincing anybody new by using that line of reasoning. I would tell him in the next debate, even if there's a hint of unfairness, don't bother going after the moderator. Ignore the moderator to the best of your ability. Yeah. 700 club achieved. Yes, Trump said he would probably try to get her put in prison if he's elected. That's probably a winning campaign strategy. There are a lot of people in this country that really hate Hillary Clinton. And there are a lot more people than hate her that dislike her to some degree and probably secretly harbor feelings of, man, it would be pretty cool if a former first lady was rotting in a jail cell for treason. I admit I would enjoy watching that. It would be very enjoyable for me to finally see a Clinton after all these years brought to justice. It would be a very difficult case, though, to try, because you got to realize she's got all sorts of tech experts and so forth helping her to evade the law. It'd be very difficult to prosecute. He'd need a very competent attorney general who wasn't afraid of accidentally dropping a barbell on their head, for instance. Yeah, where are her apologies for character assassinating all of Bill's victims? If you want to talk about the vague possibility that Trump was acting with impropriety based on his statements, which could very well be just him bragging about things that never happened, we've all met people like that too. We've all met people who claim, yeah, I slept with 20 women. Yeah, I didn't use a fucking condom. Yeah, I fucking fucked that bitch. Oh, man. And it's not true. They're like total fucking neckbeard virgin or something like that. We know people like that. Typically, the louder they talk, the less exploits they actually have to talk about. Yeah, maybe Trump has never slept around. Maybe the only people he's ever banged have been his wives. Who knows? We don't know. There's no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. In Bubba Bill's case, though, there was pretty good evidence. These people have never actually recanted their stories. there were three different people at the debate who claimed that, basically Clinton threatened them, molested them, raped them. Now, then you had, of course, the woman who was 12. She was raped, and Clinton was the defender involved in that case, defending the child rapist. And again, for anyone that didn't hear it the first time around, I will say this. I don't care that Clinton was a public defender in that case. That's not immoral. That's their job as a defender. What's immoral is that thereafter she was joking and laughing about it as though it wasn't a big deal, as though it was something to be made fun of rather than something to maybe regret or not to talk about at all because you feel some level of shame. What this shows me is Hillary Clinton doesn't feel shame for having to defend somebody who ruined somebody's life. That's what it shows me. As far as Bubba Bill goes, yeah, it was years ago that all of those claims took place. It was also more than a decade ago that this tape was taped. So it's not an apples to oranges comparison, except when, and Trump points this out, and I think this was effective too. I said a bunch of inappropriate things, but Bubba Bill did a bunch of inappropriate things. Yeah, that could be effective. With female voters, certainly it could. Especially young females, because now they have to look at Hillary Clinton as the chiding old woman who defends a pervert, as opposed to women's rights champion in their subconscious. And it could be helpful for them, yeah. Huma grabbing Hillary right now. There's no single soundbite of the night tonight. There were so many attacks, especially from Trump, aimed at Hillary. It would be difficult to choose just one. But I'd say my favorite overall was when he said, yeah, she'd probably be in jail if he were elected president, because I think that's a big winner. Because there are people who, they may not admit it, but deep inside, they love the idea of the drama that would cause, honestly. If for no other reason, they may be a total Democrat, but they're also just a little bit twisted. And they're like, oh man, it'd be so great. It would the country would be in such uproar because all those Hillary fans would be so whacked out at the fact that their candidate was rotting in a jail cell. Oh, a lot of people would really love that. I know I would. I'd have a live stream going. Clinton goes to jail live stream for the next 5 hours. All right, I got my Ben and Jerry's and I've got some a microbrew or something like that. And I'd be talking about it. Yes, very much so. It'd certainly be good for the subscriber count to analyze something like that. Yes, her uranium deal with Putin. Trump didn't bring that up. He should have said, "Oh, what about Uranium One through the Clinton Foundation? Oh, they were Russians. Maybe they do want you to be elected, and so they're pretending to favor me so you can talk about that when they're actually favoring you. It's a double conspiracy." It makes just as much sense as what Clinton's talking about with regards to WikiLeaks. So the Russians are trying to use WikiLeaks to destroy Hillary Clinton's campaign. Okay. I think it's time for great grandma Clinton to go to the funny farm if she actually believes that that's true. Reverse jail, no gated community. Yes, Trump was sniffling again, although a little bit less often. He just seems to do that. Nobody cares. Again, it's like all of these things that Clinton thinks are revelations aren't revelations. They just corroborate, yeah, Trump is a little bit piggish. The problem is that Hillary Clinton, whenever something's corroborated in regards to her character, it happens to be she did something that's very likely illegal, she did something that's completely immoral, or she lied. And those are worse labels than, yeah, you're brash, piggish individual. They're a lot worse. This campaign maybe boils down to the race between the psychopathic sorority sister and the drunken frat boy, essentially. Which one would you rather spend time with, knowing that both of them are going to act at their worst? I'm going to take the drunken frat boy because he's probably just going to pass out and I won't have to deal with him too much. But the psychopathic sorority sis might very well, try to hobble me or stab me or something. Yeah, not the good kind of psycho, I suppose. Yeah. I wouldn't say that Trump crushed her. There's still work to do. But he redeemed himself. He flooded the news cycle with new quips and jabs, honestly, which was his goal. He attacked her probably twice as much as he even planned, just to get the tape out of people's minds. And he did win. He was victorious, at least in terms of completely wiping his opponent's honesty count out. Therefore, yes, it is a win, but he didn't wipe her out. He's still got to work more in order to truly wipe her out. He'll probably do that at the third debate. If he performs this well at the third debate, yeah, he probably wins the election. Yeah, it's very funny to see people, instant fact-checking time. Like anybody cares about reality. Reality doesn't matter. I said it long ago. It's all about perception. Why do I hate the Green Party? I don't hate them. They're irrelevant. They're not a threat to me. But any party that wants to rapidly up the tax rate and basically start consulting magical crystals in lieu of gathering intelligence on countries that have nuclear weapons, yeah, I'm not going to vote for them. Jill Stein is like the friendly hippie lady that will give you funny tea and then you hope that she doesn't molest you or something like that. That is, I'm sure she's a very entertaining person to hang around. She probably has probably has LSD raves and lots of sex and all. Okay, that's fine. Okay, go to Haight-Ashbury or whatever. That's great. But that doesn't work on a national scale. That should be, people want to do that stuff, they can. But I don't want to be compelled to smoke mandatory cannabis every weekend to free my mind so that aliens don't come and abduct me like Jill Stein would probably suggest I should. I'm just not going to. Yeah, Jill Stein, honestly, for her age, she's pretty well put together as well. That is admittedly true. She looks a little bit like Cyndi Lauper, honestly. Like Cyndi Lauper in sort of like the 2006 era when she cut her hair short. Looks very much like her. Similar, I swear to God, just look it up. Facial structure is almost exactly the same. Body is rather similar in their build. It's actually a little bit freakish. Maybe Cyndi Lauper's running for the presidency and we just don't realize it yet. She's just in makeup every time she makes a public appearance. Well, yeah, I'm still watching chat here. Yeah, she's a crazy hippie. Oh, yeah, the supposed Trump tape of him saying the N-word. I highly doubt that it exists. I think that that's an attempt to intimidate Trump supporters. And if it does exist, again, he's already been called a virulent racist for months and months. I'm not even sure at this point that something that monumental would take him down. But it would take Clinton down, and James O'Keefe claims to have a tape that sounds roughly similar to that. What would people do? Here's an interesting question. Let's say you're an undecided voter, because neither Trump nor Clinton's proposals really irk you enough to turn you away from them, nor please you enough to vote for them. What would you do if on the same day tapes of both presidential candidates saying completely horrible racist things were released, to the point at which it was impossible for you to even think about supporting either of them? What would you do? You'd probably vote for Gary Johnson or you'd stay home. If that were to happen, if there is such a Trump tape and James O'Keefe is telling the truth, the latter is very likely, the former, I think, a lot less likely. But let's say they're both true. We'll probably see 20% for third parties in the election. It'd be catastrophic. What you would end up seeing is the odd situation in which the establishment actually destroys itself on both sides. It literally crushes both poles of its own support, collapses under its own weight, and stops existing altogether. You'd see a mass exodus of Republicans and Democrats that are capable of saving themselves from the roaring inferno engulfing D.C., in a metaphoric sense, of course. Jump ship. Democrats would join the Greens, maybe. Republicans would join the Libertarians. New parties would form, and you'd have a free-for-all. It'd be complete and utter chaos. Honestly, I hope it's true. I hope it's true that both Trump and Clinton have said absolutely terrible things, and that you just get the fucking dozens of leaks over the next couple of weeks. That's what I hope for, because it'd rip DC apart. They wouldn't even be able to save themselves. I'd be hilarious. I'd just leave a live stream on 24/7 at that point. Get up in the morning, I'd grab a cup of coffee, I'd just sit down here, go through the news, and stare bleakly into the webcam. Say, oh, well, it's day 3 of the destruction of Washington, D.C., and probably another civil war or something like that. Day 3 of the constitutional crisis because we've got no working candidates. Oh, it'd be hilarious. It'd be just great. Yeah. Yeah, there doesn't need to be a nuclear war with Russia. It's just that the things that Clinton says, look, Clinton claims, there are two funny things that she claimed tonight. She claims that Trump is reckless, and yet if she actually carries out a no-fly zone in Syria, she's going to take us beyond 2 minutes to midnight. Do you think the Russians are going to approve of such an act? No, they'll probably fire upon our planes. Are you going to try to exclude the Russians from that no-fly zone under the premise that they're helping Bashar al-Assad and you're trying to save the FSA in a doomed struggle to keep ISIS from butchering and beheading them all? I don't think that's a great idea. And then her other strange line of reasoning escapes me actually at the moment. It was a domestic policy. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Everyone's focused right now on, I think, if I had to choose one thing that people will be talking about tomorrow, above all else, the big takeaway, probably be Trump threatening to put her in jail. Nothing else after that really matters in the minds of his supporters anyway. So they're going to post that all over the place. That and the fact that he named George Soros. It's sort of this taboo thing where you're not really supposed to talk about the donor class, I guess, because you haven't. Did Obama name a single person, a single one of these like billionaires that was supporting Romney so many years ago? No. He said, oh, well, your donor friends are X, your donor friends are Y, but he never named them. Trump's naming them constantly. Soros, Blumenthal, Warren Buffett, and the rest. It's actually completely different from what we're used to dealing with. Yeah, that's the other thing. Didn't you notice? She never defended Bill Clinton. She never proclaimed on that stage that he didn't rape anyone. She never said he didn't grope anyone. She never said he didn't assault anyone. And she didn't even respond to allegations that she attempted to assassinate the character of those who claim that it was true. That's because it's all true. It's a deflection tactic. It's okay, well, I'm going to move the goalpost over here and I'm going to start straw manning the entire conversation because I can't respond to it. That's what Hillary was doing. That's going to hurt her. Her unwillingness to directly address the issue shows that there is some veracity, at least, in what Trump's saying, or that the issue is so convoluted that she's not capable of defending her positions in the past on it. That could actually destroy her campaign because it seems that the only ammo she's had against Trump has to do with, again, being, well, he's a sexist, he's a bully, and he's reckless. And yet she's ranting about Russia and won't even address rape claims against her husband. It could be fairly powerful stuff, honestly, in stopping her campaign. Yeah, the Clinton murders aren't addressed because like Seth Rich or Vince Foster or something like that. Who's to say it wasn't somebody else that had them assassinated? That would be the argument that the Clintons would use. But when you're talking about sexual assault, somebody has positively identified the specific individual happening to be Bill Clinton as the person of interest that they claim sexually assaulted, molested, pressured, threatened, whatever, them. So it's a lot easier to go with that reasoning. The Clinton murder sort of lexicon, you can look at it and say, well, it's suspicious. I look at it and I say it's suspicious. It's very strange how Vince Foster died. But I can't show any real evidence. There's nobody to claim, oh, yeah, I saw this person that's associated with Clinton climb out the back window after killing Vince Foster. There's no such thing. With the rape claims, you do have that. You have people who said, yes, Bill Clinton touched me that way. Bill Clinton raped me. Bill Clinton made a pass at me and then threatened to have me killed or have me fired from my job if I told anyone. It's much easier to go with that line of reasoning. Taking the polls seriously. I take the polls seriously in an aggregate and nowhere else. Any single poll I ignore. unless it's aggregated, because the assumption is that it's much more difficult to rig the results of dozens of polling firms as opposed to a single firm. Yeah, I'm sure that some of the firms have bias in them, systemic bias. Rasmussen in 2012 had a systemic bias. Several polling firms had a massive Democratic bias in 2014's midterms, but we don't know in which way that bias might go. And there's no, if we look at the polling bias that has existed and then the results and compare them, we don't see a pattern of either party rigging the polls. The only thing really now that's different is that it's fairly clear that even a lot of Republicans hate the Republican candidate for not being a true establishment insider. That may be true. It might be a reason why the polls would be rigged in one way or the other. But I don't have evidence of this, so I can't include it. I don't count it in my estimation of how the election goes. I think Trump had a very good night. He smashed his opponent verbally on so many occasions that it's going to be difficult, I think, for her really going forward to deflect so many attacks in one news cycle. An average of biased polls is, unless the bias is systemic in one direction or the other. But if there's bias in both directions, which would be more likely, generally speaking, an aggregate's perfectly accurate. So I'll use RCP. Trump should use tonight's debate to energize his support base and tell people Clinton didn't address her husband's rapes and so forth. She's dishonest. She wants to put coal workers out of business, essentially. She let him do the fear-mongering for a change. Instead of just talking positively, oh, we're going to make things so great, oh, they're going to be fantastic, we're going to do bigly and all that other crap. Which, I mean, I don't believe it. No, I don't. I think his tax reform would be great for me personally. I think there would be jobs created, but we wouldn't suddenly soar into utopia, let's face it. But he needs to actually temporarily temper the positive message and do a little bit of fear-mongering of his own, because right now Clinton has had a month to do nonstop fear-mongering about him. He's Hitler. He's racist, sexist, xenophobic. His followers are basically the next Hitler Youth. Let him do that for a change and scare people regarding Clinton. That would be my advice. And he may or may not. It doesn't matter. He's got his own strategy going forward. It seems to be working, generally speaking. The outcome of the election is still by no means certain. I simply give him an advantage because I've got WikiLeaks telling me there's going to be at least 3 more leaks. I've got James O'Keefe telling me there's going to be a major leak that'll sink her campaign. I've got Roger Stone now saying for the second time, yeah, we've got all this crap. Clinton, meanwhile, on the other hand, is basically stagnant. All she did at this debate is do exactly what she did at the first. She was smarmy. She tried to stick to issues. She tried to, in some cases, hold back. And she tried to make offhand comments about her opponent and how he was somehow nuts or something like that. It didn't work before. I can't see it working now. If the best that they have on Trump is a tape from 10 years ago, then their chances aren't great at defeating him. Oh, yeah, the CNN poll just said Hillary won. Yes, but let's look at who watches CNN. Was it a snap poll, or was it a poll of those who watched, or something along those lines? I'll wait for a quick response here. The problem being, if it's an audience poll, the average person watching CNN is a Democrat. So yeah, that'd be expected, honestly. Yeah, poll of the 2 moderators, that might make sense. Yeah, people, I think, learned from the first debate that CNN likes one candidate over the other. Yeah, and if you look at the Drudge poll, it'll be like 99% Trump won the debate. So I'm going to discount polls, maybe using a flawed methodology, maybe that get brigaded, maybe that only count audiences that tend to lean heavily in one direction or the other. And Hillary does kind of win on actual substance. As far as issues go, yeah, she's more coherent in delivering them. But on anything else, she loses, and that's been her problem. heavy.com. The funny thing is, the same people, by the way, here's one thing we can point out just for humor's sake. The same people saying that any online poll was invalid because it could get brigaded before, when Trump was mysteriously at massive levels on some of them, they would accept a poll like that saying that Hillary was ahead after a debate performance that I myself would class as lackluster. The same people. They'd accept the online poll if it shows Hillary winning. And honestly, Trump's fans do the same in reverse. If Hillary's winning, they say, oh, well, CTR is rigging it, or CNN rigged it or something. And at the same time, if it showed Trump up with 90%, they say, oh, well, that makes sense because Trump did so well. There is a little bit of both sides doing this. However, my reading of the debate is Trump completely decimated her by linking her with Clinton's affairs, talking about WikiLeaks. He got in several relatively funny jabs. Being humorous is actually fairly important for him, too, because it makes him look more personable. What would be a good poll at this point? I'm not looking at any of the polls at the moment. I won't look at them till I've closed this out. And actually, since it's 11:49, it's probably about time to do that. Oh, NBC News status. Oh, yeah. No, don't go anywhere. Okay. Whew. I grabbed it this time. That can be difficult. All right, now where's that link that you just posted? I saw an NBC Twitter link. Alrighty then. Copy this crap out. I don't even like Twitter, but look at this. Fact check. Trump says Clinton acid washed her email server. She did not. Yeah. Okay, NBC. Yeah. Here, I'm going to post this in chat too. Good, to Hidolf Adler. Good find. And somebody else might have posted first. So whoever posted, it doesn't matter. Take a look at that. This is fact checking according to NBC. This is why I'm going to completely ignore if CNN has a poll up there. Doesn't matter. Is this... I can't even... I'm almost lost for words. I've got to remain composed for a moment. Jesus. Oh my God. Yeah, he just completely trolled them with that comment. They don't even realize what they're posting here. Yeah, fact check it at Hillary.com. Oh, I see someone else posting an NBC link. Is it the same one or... it's so hard to navigate through this crap when it's going so quickly. Oh my God. Oh, I'll see. Is this a different one or the same one? Yeah, that's the same one. She didn't use a corrosive chemical on her server, people. Are you fucking dumbasses? Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. It just gets funnier as I look at it, too. Trump says Clinton acid washed her email server. The truth, Clinton's team used an app called BleachBit. She did not use a corrosive chemical. No, but they did use rocks and hammers on some of her mobile devices. Oh, my God. I ignore straw polls. They're way too easily rigged. Yeah, I actually got BleachBit when I heard about how well it worked. If it can work at keeping the FBI from finding things, then it's damn sure going to confuse anyone that like steals my computer and just wants to go through it for like, random shit that my book files or something are on it. So I said, yeah, I'm going to get BleachBit. Must be pretty damn effective. It's like free advertising for them. Yep, Styx is in the zone. Chuckling about NBC News. It's so inept. I've got to close it out because if I look at it, I'm going to start laughing again, honestly. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's why nobody cares about fact-checking at this point in the election, because it's become a farce, honestly. Not even necessarily because of bias, but because of the nitpicky way in which they're doing the fact checking on all sides. Something like that doesn't exactly help to restore trust in the media. Now, does it? I would think not. My feed is all screwed up there for a second. Oh, I don't need, by the way, all these friggin' I don't need notes open at this point. But yeah, for anybody that wasn't tuned in earlier, Trump, at least on finesse, wins this debate hands down by a good margin, not like a Pence-Kane margin. Anyone saying he lost probably was trying to pay attention to issues without realizing the majority of people in the country don't care about issues at this point. If they did, they would have already made up their minds. The two candidates have already put out basically their policies. At this point, it becomes who can weather being attacked by the other candidate more. But anyway, here, it's about time for me to end this stream and do some other stuff that I have to do. Not video related, not YouTube related. Mostly have tea, chamomile tea. My throat's getting a little bit sore. It rained the other day, and then it got nice and dry and breezy, stirring up all those allergens that were waiting there to be stirred up because now they're nice and humid. There's like mushrooms everywhere outside. Friggin' there's Amanita muscaria. There's like straw mushrooms that are technically edible. In fact, they're kind of tasty. Like fairy ring mushrooms and boletus and russula and everything else. Griselles out in the woods. Everything under the sun. Most of which, won't kill you if you eat them, other than a couple of the varieties out there. But final question for thoughts. It was a fun debate to watch, basically. And that's really about the only reaction I can have, other than it was basically an insult fest. It was like the first debate, but with a more coherent Trump, and Clinton obviously getting visibly bothered about the line of questioning regarding WikiLeaks and Bubba Bills raping, half a dozen people. So yeah, I'm not on chat anymore. I'm looking at the screen. I'm gonna log off now. At least it wasn't the first presidential debate. If it had been, I wouldn't even watch the third if it had been like the first one. But this convinces me that the next one is a must-see event too. Now we wait for O'Keefe and WikiLeaks. O'Keefe says he's got some stuff at least for this week to compile. And then the next week he's going to release his campaign killer on the Clintons that'll destroy them forever. That's about all. Peace out.